Valorant Ranked, something that I've spent a big chunk of my time on. I've sunk about 1,600 hours into the game and still going, and I feel like I could probably give people who've been in lower ranks some insight on how to improve a lot faster than they are now. Because I have wasted a lot of time in ranked, and there are a lot of things that I've realized now, and I think I can kind of make a video explaining what you need to do to improve at each and every single rank. Now, a big misconception that I hear a lot is a lot of people in the lower ranks really fixate on aim. Aim is important, but it is not the key thing to being a good Valorant player. The reason why Tens is so good is because he has sunk tens of thousands of hours in FPS games, not just because he was born that way. And another thing is mental is going to be a huge part of it. You need to come into this with a learning mindset and almost like a new player. You need to take every single mistake you make with an open mind. Instead of thinking, why was he there? Or why wasn't my team doing this? Think about, why did I die here? What happened that put me in this position to die here? Make sure you're constantly playing when you are feeling ready to play. Don't force yourself to play when you're not in your ideal conditions, just because it can put you in a state of autopilot and you will queue 10 games and gain absolutely nothing from those games. For those stuck in iron and bronze, I'm just going to be blunt with you. You don't have enough time in the game, especially if you're iron, and you just need to play more. The biggest thing to do is just focus on practicing the core mechanics of the game, understanding how the guns work. So practice lots of death matches. You want to practice crosshair placement, which will come by just practicing in deathmatch, making sure that you're going for one taps only, or trying to just always be shooting the head in your death matches. Always making sure you're trying to pre-aim where your opponent's head will be. There's a big debate on whether or not you should counter strafe, but just for good habits, I recommend practicing counter strafing so that you always shoot when you are most accurate. In silver, you want to start picking one or two agents that you want to main and only play those agents when you queue comp. Not only will this build a sense of consistency, but you will learn the agents a lot faster than if you were to spread yourself filling for your teammates. This will also allow you to learn how to use your utility a lot better to set yourself up for kills or clear things without having to necessarily rely on your aim. Some agents I recommend are Raze and Sova, who are very self-sufficient agents that can play around themselves and play around their team. In gold, I'd say the biggest thing that I notice is people don't know how to play man advantage. When you're in that rank, everybody tends to just have a tendency to swing. It's the same in all ranks, but I noticed this most apparent here just because there are a lot of people who are not mechanically inept and think they can just get away with swinging everything. Sometimes it's better to just play your man advantage and peak with your team so that somebody can get your trade, or at least so that you don't just lose your whole team one by one. That's why you have typically in gold people getting 1v5 by a single Reyna. In plat, the biggest thing I noticed is people do not know how to play their role. Remember those agents that I told you to one trick? Yeah, that comes in really handy here. If you're playing a duelist character, you need to make sure you understand what your job is. A duelist isn't a character designed to only get kills. Your job is to take space in some form or another. Be it jet dash to take space and you make sure you're clearing your corners so your team can follow up and trade you. If it's Reyna, you're flashing in and trying to get that initial first blood, etc. Phoenix ult, so on and so forth. Make sure you're playing your role. If you're an initiator, make sure you are initiating your team and you're not just dumping all your utility in main. If you are a controller, make sure you're not dying at the start of the round whilst you still have smokes. That kind of util can be very round changing. So, you've hit diamond now. I'd say the biggest part of diamond is not only continuing to refine the things we've been working on in the past, being our mechanics, crosshair placement, of course, um, our positioning, making sure we're not using utility out in the open, things like that, our utility usage, and just our general map awareness, understanding how the maps work. But on top of that, now we're also going to be working and incorporating better communication and better planning. Instead of just kind of mindlessly walking around during prep phase, we now actually look at our map and try and look at the enemy team's comp and see what can we do, what can we take advantage of. Do they have a sentinel to cover the flanks? Do they have smokes? Do they have an initiator? What kind of things can we do? Trying to think of plans before the game actually starts, using that time in that buy phase to actually think about a strategy that you can get going with your team. To make that final stretch out into Ascendant, Immortal, Radiant, it comes down to refining all the things we've learned in the past. That means you still need to consistently be practicing your aim, not all the time, not a lot, but just making sure you have some sort of routine to do that. Making sure you have good positioning, good utility usage, and you're aware of how to use your utility effectively. Playing off of your teammates, making sure you're not baiting your teammate, making sure you're playing for the trade. Map awareness, making sure you understand how the map works, how the map goes, thinking of potential ways you can play around the enemy team's comp. If they have, for example, a lack of a Sova, you can play more off angles, more ratty spots that are harder to clear without that kind of the drone or the dart. Being way more proactive in your games and trying to always find that solo impact that you can have is what will set the difference. I'd say the gap between Ascendant and Immortal is from Ascendant to around Immortal 1 is relatively small, but from then on, it can be quite huge. I'm also still trying to make my steps towards Radiant, and it just takes a lot of time and a lot of conscious effort, and that's all it is really to it. I just hope that this guide could have maybe eliminated some of the time wasted in the ranked queues and make your goals and your objectives a little more clear. Of course, everybody's different, and there is no perfect guide in the world that will make you the best player. It's all just about time, and that's all it is at the end of the day. I do hope this guide could have been helpful to somebody, and I've also made a Discord in case anybody needs help. I will link it in the description where you can join. You'll probably find me. I will try to reply as well all the time I can. And I really thank you guys for the support on the last video. It did insanely well. I was not expecting it to blow up the way it did. That's going to bring it to an end for me, and I hope you guys have a good day.
Yeah, he's default.
Nice.
Nice, good shit.
Go.
Good shit.
Nice, that ult.